Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Napoleon, and I'm back with another Enlisted episode. Today we'll be doing a guide on the Tiger IIP, a German heavy tank in Enlisted. This video will cover the tank and how you should use it in Enlisted. And before we start, I would like to say that this video has been possible through the friends at Discord and now Facebook, meaning that if you haven't liked, subscribed, or joined the Discord or Facebook, I highly suggest that you do that. And let's get started with the Tiger IIP. Before we start, let's talk about some history of the Tiger IIP. Just before the Tiger went into service in 1942, work has already begun on its predecessor. In 1939, Heinkel ordered the development of a heavy tank, with Porsche following suit in 1939. Porsche developed its heavy new tank of the failed VK4501P, churning out two new models designated as VK4502P and later Type 180 and Type 181. The Type 180 had a turret mounted centrally, while the Type 181 had a turret mounted to the rear and the engines in the center, akin to the Ferdinand tank destroyer. Both designs used the same component of the VK4501P, and both designs were very similar except for the turret locations and some mechanical parts, but these two designs never passed wooden prototypes. Heinkel, on the other hand, used more conventional design on their turret layout, but in the end, the results look way more similar to the previous heavy tank, the Tiger I. The VK4503H was designated and then reassembled with a Panther tank layout, with the transmission in the front along with the driving compartment, and the turret in the center and the engine in the rear. The design used many components from the Panther and the Panther II in order to standardize production. The suspension system was also different from anything produced at the time, still used as a torsion bar suspension. The wheels were arranged only in an overlapping method and no interleaving. The new spectacularity or box drive method designed simplified maintenance and increased production by using less wheels than interleaving. Only 9 wheels on each side, with full steel wheels on the later Tiger I models used to save rubber. The first wooden mock-up stock was presented in October 20th of 1943 to Hitler, which was then approved for further development as the Panzerkampfwagen Tiger Aus B or Tiger II and Tiger B for short. The Heinkel variant had more advantages than the Porsche variant for being developed faster and had a faster production rate, thus it was designed and approved for service. The Heinkel design began production in Heinkel plant at Kassel, and the first 3 working prototypes were chummed out in December of 1943. Full-scale production began on January 1944 and continued all the way until March 1945. Due to the late introduction and amount of resources needed to construct these heavy tanks, only about 482 production models were made and produced in this time period, considerably less than its predecessor, the Tiger I. In terms of characteristics, the Tiger II is just massive in size, weighing 68.5 tons. It is one of the heaviest tanks to see service, outbeaten by the heaviest serving vehicle, which is the Jagdtiger, weighing 71.7 tons. The Tiger II's frontal armor is 150mm thick, and this is without sloping, which is more than about 200mm thick. The thick frontal glasses plate armor was never penetrated by any Allied tank during the entire war, and the side and rear armor is still 80mm, which presents a weaker target, but still very armored at long ranges. The gun on the Tiger II was the famous 8.8cm gun, which can defeat all Allied armor in World War II. The gun is sighted with the gunner's monocular sight, which allows 2 magnifications, 2.5 and 5. In practice, the gun is able to hit a target 1 kilometer away 100% of the time. The turret on the Tiger II is the prototype developed by Krupp and consequently known as a Porsche turret, hence the P in the name. The turret model presents some design flaws, of which most of them were fixed with the H variant. Some of these design flaws include the curved front of the turret, which is not as thick as the rest of the hull and was thus able to be penetrated, and the curved form created a sharp trap deflecting incoming shells into the hull's roof. The commander's cupola was also protruding, and the turret is powerful and could rotate under 2 settings, high and low. In low, the turret could rotate a full 360 degrees in 60 seconds, and the same 19 seconds at high. Although the engine allowed the turret to traverse 10 seconds at full power, but this was not recommended to avoid straining the engine. The turret traverse is powered by pedals or a lever by the gun and is fine enough to use these methods. 2 small adjustments with the manual traverse handling are not necessary. The Tiger II was still propelled by the V12 Macbay ML230 gasoline engine, which powered the lighter Panther and Tiger I. The increased weight of the tank made the engine underpowered and required extra care to make sure the engine does not fail. Despite that, the tank was capable of reaching a maximum speed of 41.5 km per hour, making the Tiger II quite agile for its weight. However, the Tiger II consumes an exorbitant amount of fuel and requires extensive maintenance to keep running. This impedes its combat effectiveness in the whole strategic viewpoint, as it had only an operational view of 120 kilometers on cross-country terrain. The heavyweight also caused multiple mechanical issues on the tank, and the drivetrain is overburdened and is intended for lighter vehicles, and multiple breakdowns were experienced in early Tiger II models. Although these issues were ironed out over time with improvements, but still present due to the lack of supplies to maintain these tanks. Now let's move on to the statistics for the Tiger II-P. The Tiger II-P is classified as a heavy German tank of the final period of World War II, serially produced since January of 1944. Thanks to the 88mm gun, it is able to hit any tank of any anti-Hitler coalition in the frontal projection of at any distance of more than 2 kilometers. Historically, that is inaccurate considering the fact that it can only hit anything 100% of the time out. 1 kilometer. 2 kilometers is a stretch, but I can take it. At the same time, at such distance, thanks to its thick armor at rational angles, it is practically invulnerable to particular fire until we're talking about the turret, which I'll get on to later. It has a 5-man crew. It has an 88mm gun with 70 rounds, of which half of them are HE and half of them are anti-tank. It has 2 7.92mm machine guns of MG34 caliber, and of which it has 500 rounds, one of which is in the turret. It has a maximum speed of 41.67 kilometers per hour, frontal hull armor of 150mm, side armor 80mm, back armor of 80mm, and bottom armor of 25mm. The turret armor is 150mm, side armor of 82, back armor of 80, and top armor of 100mm, which is funny considering the fact that I wouldn't expect a lot of the armor to be on the top. Engine power is at 595 kilometers per hour, which means this thing is going to be slow. Weight is 68 tons. And yeah, that is pretty much the stats for the Tiger II. Let's move on to the recap section. Before we start on how good the Tiger II is, let's talk about its downsides, and those downsides are going to be one of its biggest flaws. And the first downside off the bat is its weight. This thing is extremely slow. I do not expect it to outcompete the Panther, do not even expect it to outcompete the Tiger, and as a matter of fact, don't expect it to reach places in time. This tank is most likely going to be used on the defensive, and as a matter of fact, thankfully, since you're playing as the Axis in Berlin, this tank will be always on the defensive. That said, it can still outrun many dudes in the sense that if a person throws a TNT charge, you can easily move away. That is something you can still do with this tank, although you can't be dodging anti-tank or Panzerfaust rounds left and right. The other big issue about the tank is that the turret. The turret can be easily pinned and almost pretty much on the cheeks and pretty much around the turret. This is something that the H variant solved, but apparently we have the P variant, which is sad considering the fact that we should have gotten the H variant, but the Tiger II is still here. That said, the turrets can still be penetrated by almost every tank in Allied Berlin, so you have to be extremely careful. In terms of what the Tiger II-P is good at, one of the big things it's good at is the gun. The gun is still the 88mm. It can pretty much one-shot most tanks if you know where you're shooting. That said, you will get some bounces, especially if you're facing T-34-85s, which is most of the time. DTs can easily penetrate you from the turret, but thankfully, the other big thing that you have is basically the hull. The hull is unpenetrable. At any range, it cannot be penetrated. And another good thing is that it has a pretty good reverse. Honestly, this tank is pretty good at going forward and is pretty good at going back, so that is a good thing. And because of its weight, you can actually fire on the move, although I would still not recommend you firing on the move. And the final issue, probably the biggest issue, is that this tank is very acceptable to cast bombing. It is not fast, meaning that if a plane goes for you, you're pretty much done for because, like, you can't really run, and if you do run, you're not going to be running fast enough to evade the bombs. Yeah, so that is the Tiger II for you. It's a pretty good tank overall. It can basically one-shot anyone. It has the heaviest armor of all the tanks in Berlin, albeit the turret is kind of a target for aim here. And the hull is pretty good, but most of the time, I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna be peeking out your turret, so the hull really doesn't matter. I'd rather have a better turret than a better hull, but that said, at least this tank is pretty good in terms of the weapons, which the weapon, the 88mm, is very good. And that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.